Transformations. This is a Thanksgiving version, and this covers the transformation, the reflection, translation, dilation, and rotation around the origin. So it starts with a definition of what transformation means and what it means in mathematics. And it's followed with the 4 different types of transformations that you'll see in this lesson, so students can refer back to this for a definition. They're going to start on slide 4, so they're going to be using the fill color feature of Google Slides in order to create their different transformations. So we're going to start with reflection, which is a mirror image flipped over a line. So in this case, they need to reflect this figure across the y-axis. So if this is the y-axis, it needs to be a mirror image on the other side. So what they need to do is just click in one of the squares, click and hold, and then they can highlight what they want to color. And they can choose any color they want. And they can only highlight just a rectangle at a time. And so here they have shown a reflection over the y-axis. The next one is a reflection, again, over the y-axis. So they just click and hold. Choose any color they like. And then in the next slide, they're going to take this same figure and they're going to reflect it over the x-axis. So this time it's going to be above. So those reflections. Now the next slide, they're going to reflect over a line. So they're going to reflect over this line, x equals 1. So it has to be equal distance from the line and a mirror image. And then they're going to reflect over the line y equals -1. Then they're shown how to reflect a figure when part of that figure is over the line. So these little points here are going to act like a hinge, and they're just going to flip this figure up so it looks like this. On the next slide, they're going to do that on this figure. Then we're going to move on to translation. So a translation is just moving a figure up, down, left, or right without changing its orientation. So in this one, they're just going to move 6 units to the right. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it would look like this. On the next slide, they're going to be translating, moving this figure 4 units to the left and then 2 units down. So there's 2 moves. Same thing on the next and the next one. Then we move on to rotation. So they're rotating around the origin. Rotation can be around any point. In this case, it's the origin. This one, we're going to moving this figure clockwise, 90 degrees, which means that would put it into quadrant 3. So they're just going to take each one of these points and they're going to use this formula, -yx. So we'll start with the first point, which is -1, 2. The new point will be -2, -1. Then the point -1, 4 will now be -4, -1. And then the final point, -3, 2, will now be -2, -3. And then the students just need to use these bars to connect the figures. Now, if your students are really advanced and you want to give them a little bit more of a challenge, you might just straighten all these bars. So you would have just 3 bars here, and the students would have to move them to fit. So in order to move the bars, they would have to click on this blue circle, and then they could move it wherever they like. So that's just a suggestion if your students need a little bit more of a challenge. Now the next figure, you're going to be moving this figure clockwise 90 degrees, which would again put it in quadrant 3. They're going to take each of the points using the formula y negative x. It will move them clockwise 90 degrees. And then they're going to move 180 degrees, which would place this figure over in quadrant 4. And they're going to take each one of the points, use the formula negative x, negative y to find the new points. Now on the final slide on rotation, they're going to be rotating 3 different times. So they're going to start with this original figure, rotate it 90 degrees clockwise, which would put it in quadrant 1 using this formula. Then they're going to take this figure again, rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise, which would put it in quadrant 3 using this formula. And then 180 degrees using the formula negative x, negative y, which would put it in quadrant 4. So they'll have 4 different figures here, all rotating around the origin. Then we move on to dilation. So they're going to dilate this figure by a scale factor of 2. So that means that each of the points on this square are going to take the coordinates of each point and multiply them by the scale factor of 2. So 1, 1 would now be 2, 2. So you just click and hold on one of the points, put it where you need it to go. This one, negative 1, 1 would now be negative 2, 2, and so on. And then they're going to use the bars again to connect their new figure. They're going to do the same thing with this triangle, this time with a scale factor of 3, which means that each one of these points, you're going to take the coordinates and multiply them by 3. The next figure has a scale factor of 1/2. Now, when the scale factor is a fraction less than 1, that means the new figure is going to be smaller. So you're going to take each of these coordinates in the corners, and you're going to multiply by 1/2 or divide by 2. And then the final slide for transformations, students are going to do 2 different transformations. They're going to move this figure, translate it 5 units to the left, and then reflect it over the x-axis. Slide 23 is vocabulary, so it's just got the 4 different types of transformations that we've just covered, and they're going to put them in the correct place in the sentence frames. So they just click on the edge, click and hold, and then they can move it where they need it to go. Now that is lesson on transformations, the Thanksgiving version.